Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a very interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the MachineWise Sonora button lock integral, made entirely in the USA. Small shop in Phoenix, Arizona. This is very impressive, but I know those of you who know, you know that I just said a whole bunch of things that means this knife is very expensive, and it is. If you are not familiar with knives that are made entirely in the United States, that equates to a very high price tag. Add to that, this is very obviously precision machined. I mean, holy moly is this precision machined. But it's also an integral, meaning that the frame is carved from a single piece of titanium. That's very expensive. So, before we get started, we cannot compare this at all to products that are made, for example, by Kershaw in the United States. That is not the same thing at all. I just want to make sure that we're very clear here. This is an expensive knife, but I think it is very fairly priced. After carrying and using this knife for a while and just experiencing the quality of this item, it's really off the charts here. I think MachineWise is a company you should be paying attention to. I can't believe, I mean, this is their first folder that they've made. They've made knives before. I believe they are more so in the balisong territory, so they know what they're doing. But this is their first folder, and it's pretty amazing, honestly. So I'll link MachineWise and their company information down in the description. You can check it out if you want. Thanks so much to MachineWise for sending this in for me to take a look at. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. As is the case with, you know, any knife that's in the same tier as this, the process involved with making knives like this, it's very tedious, it's slow, and it's expensive. So there are not thousands of these things laying around waiting to be purchased. The reason that they are pricey is because it just takes a long time to create, and there are a lot of costs involved, right, when you're running a smaller shop in the United States and trying to get these things out to people who want them. If you want to pick one of these up, you'll generally need to wait in line for a pre-order. But, you know, those of you who have been around in the knife world for a long time, you know that that's how that works, so it'll be no surprise to you. But if you're newer, you know, just wanting to get the information out there. But yeah, that'll all be linked down in the description. Let's go ahead and get some specs real quick. So the overall length of the Sonora is coming in at about 7.75 inches, 7 3/4 inches. Blade length is coming in at 3.35. Cutting edge is also about 3.35. Now, I know that people are going to point this out. They're going to say, oh my gosh, look at that grind. It's so uneven. This is done on purpose. This is 100% done on purpose, and you'll notice that it matches perfectly. That taper of the cutting bevel getting wider out to the tip is done exactly the same on both sides. This is... not only is it on purpose, it's not a new thing. There are lots of knives out there that have a grind like this where the cutting bevel is just wider. This is just a style that they've chosen to do. And it's something that you can maintain continuously as you use the knife and resharpen it. Absolutely. So I don't want anybody to think that this was a whoopsie on their part, or it's just like poor fit and finish or anything like that. No, it is 100% intentional. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. So up against something like, I need a bigger knife there. There we go. Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others. So up against the 8010 and the 8020.5, we'll use the G10 one. I don't know where the titanium one is today. You can see here that it's a little bit longer than the 8020.5. Definitely nowhere near as large as something like the 8010. Let's put it up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. So while it is shorter than the PM2, you'll probably be quick to notice that it definitely has more cutting edge. Absolutely. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Group Tillionaire, in this case the Ritter Hogue, and the Hogue Deca. Definitely closer in size to the Hogue Deca. How is the action on this knife? Oh my goodness. So this is a plunge lock, and by the way, They know how to make a plunge lock. It'll survive a triple tap. I don't need to go out and beat it against a railroad tie to prove that the locking system will hold up to normal knife use, because beating it against a railroad tie is not normal knife use. But the locking system is strong enough to withstand a little bit of spine pressure and impact, which is good enough for me. Really good. You push that button, there's no, unless you do something like that, there's really no stick. It's like minimal to no stick. I've been playing with this over and over again. There's just a little bit of a tick right at the top. But man, as soon as you push that button, that blade drops. And you can't feel anything happening inside of the pivot. There's no crunching or rolling or anything. It's just you open your eyes and the blade is closed, right? Really, really nice. Now, in the closed position, when you pull the flipper tab, the detent feels just about perfectly tuned. I mean, considering that the detent in this case is actually the plunge lock. It's about as good as you could hope for with a plunge lock, right? Not going to be quite as satisfying as something like a titanium frame lock with a detent ball, right? Or a liner lock with a detent ball or whatever. But it's really good, and you get a lot of leverage off this beautifully rounded flipper tab that is super comfortable. If you like to sit around and fidget with your knife, you can do this for days. It is so comfortable. There's just nothing to bother your finger. I mean, even the landing zone here has been beautifully machined out. It's nice and soft. I mean, it's about as soft as machined titanium can be, right? This area right here is fine. The detent strength you can see is there right at the very end, but it's a little bit of a sludge in there. It's a little bit of a flunk, right? So to MachineWise, I think this is fine. As far as the feeling of the action, the flipper tab, launching the blade, opening it, getting it into the open position, especially disengaging that button lock and having the blade fall. I mean, this is all beautiful. This area right here, we like to see more of a sudden click, right? So this is kind of a slow, like it's approaching and oh, here's the event horizon and dunk. Like that's kind of what it feels like. And it's okay and obviously works, but people definitely want to see more of a click. Now, I know that involves probably reshaping the surface of, what we're going to call the blade tank. It's just the back of the blade where the plunge lock engages, right? And probably also reshaping the plunge lock itself, which can be tricky because that's what you're using not only as the detent, but the locking system, right? So I am not a machinist. I can't do what they do. Right? I get the easy job. I get to criticize the final product. So that's what I'm doing here. I think everything is beautiful, and you guys are obviously super capable when it comes to precision milling. I mean, believe me, we're going to go over this. But that area, I think the one area that I would like to see, and I think it'll also help with the feeling of the break of what's acting as the detent. But this area right here, if it was more of a click and a little bit heavier, if you could create a little bit more heft here, this right here it'll go from satisfying to uber satisfying, right? So that's my critique there. Otherwise, to the people, the potential buyers of this product, I want you to understand that it is very, very good in the form that it's in, right? I mean, I'm going to give this knife essentially an A, and I'm just trying to, explain what would take to make it an A+, right? If I was going to grade this as a paper, it's going to be about a 95%. It's very, very good. But when it's this close to perfect, we might as well talk about what could make it perfect. So that's what I'm talking about there. Just want to be very clear. Let's do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. This is a thin knife, definitely. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. They accomplished that, by the way, without making this feel delicate. This is a very easy object to carry. It's large enough and heavy enough that you're not going to forget it's in your pocket. A lot of the heft coming from the fact that it's a solid titanium integral, right? But it's on the thinner side and it's on the more compact side, just a hair longer than the Para 3. Nowhere near as tall, even including the flipper tab. Honestly, a joy to carry this thing in my pocket. An absolute joy to carry this around. Really, really great. And solid feeling. So you never feel like you're carrying something that's super delicate, which is, to me, is always an issue, especially when you pay a lot of money for something. It's hard for me. I'm like, I paid, hundreds of dollars for something I feel like could just blow away in the breeze, right? Not this thing. It's solid enough. What are we looking at for materials here? Let's actually pull this down. This is cool. This is what it comes with. It's a 3D printed sort of container here. And you have, I guess, leftover brass from, it says this is your bolster. That's the access to the internals because this is an integral and you have to have access to the pivot, right? But that's left over there. They give you that. It comes with a T15 bit, right? Quarter inch will fit in regular driver, and some lubricant. The knife fits sort of in here like this, and it screws together. It's kind of cool. A card here, Sonora, mine's number 3, right? So this is very early. If you're watching this like a year or two in the future, it's likely that the knife has gotten substantially better since this review. But this is MagnaCut 63. Nice. Way to pay attention to what the community likes to see. That's very cool and should be noted. If you're watching this video and are a potential buyer of this product, you should note that they are obviously not just trying to sell you MagnaCut. They're trying to sell you MagnaCut that's been properly heat treated, right? I have to do that because it's just an opinion thing. But the community generally likes to see MagnaCut from 62 to 64, so that's really, really cool. Says the type of titanium, 6L4V, which is American grade 5. Pattern is fine step over, final QC check, DC and MB, which I have to assume are names of people who do the quality control stuff. Yeah, so MagnaCut and titanium and a little bit of brass for the area right here, unless this is like aluminum, which I doubt it. I'm saying brass because it looks like that's the color of it, right? It very well could be a different material, but I'm pretty certain that this is brass. Anyways, that's what they make the access for. But those are your materials there, so very, very good. Let's go ahead and weigh it. The weight of this guy, I'm gonna guess is about 4 ounces, 4.5 maybe. No, less, 3.49. Not heavy at all. In fact, great ratios considering you have 3.35 inches of blade and cutting edge. That's pretty rare for an integral. I'm guessing it feels a little heavy because the balance is more towards the butt end. Not bad though. I'm just a bad guess of weight, right? It just feels like a solid knife. That's what I like. That's part of what I like about integral knives, for sure. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. It's actually a T15, which you saw actually comes with the knife. So anyways, T15 for the pivot, and that's all you got to do. You just take that out if you want to remove the blade to clean it. The nice thing about an integral knife is that there is very, very little in terms of the disassembly process, right? Most of the time, you really don't even need to take the knife apart to clean the pivot, right? Most of the time, all you're going to be doing is adjusting the pivot for action and tightness. If you really need to take the blade out to clean it, it's literally one step. There's nothing else here except for the screw that holds in the pocket clip, which is completely reversible, by the way. Nice way of doing that. There's so many companies that can take note of this simple. Look how they did this. It's so simple. Geez, one screw, that's all you need. It's nested into the frame, so it's not going to move around, right? T15 also back here. But that's it. That's a really nice thing about an integral is there's just almost no like unnecessary moving parts or extra parts. It's just, in this case, 2 screws, the access to the pivot, and then the actual like blade and the bearings, of course, right? But boy, nothing. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness here real quick. Blade stock thickness is coming in at 125 thousandths, about what I'd expect. Okay. Let's get into the meat and potatoes here. This edge is wonderful, and this is a polished edge, and you will get that edge from the factory from them when you buy their products, and wow, is it ready to slice. Fantastic. Not necessarily like, open L laser beam thin, but definitely, a good slicer, a good cutter, it'll do what you want it to do. This is an impressive piece of cutlery for sure. And something that I just think is really impressive, and part of the reason that I want people to pay attention to MachineWise is look at the level of detail here. Look at this micro milling, these areas, right? The chamfered lines, all of these, how we have the different areas of texturing are divided by yet another milled line. The edges of the pocket clip, they're milled. Okay, so this company is clearly capable of beautiful, excellent tolerances, right? And that's why, the couple of things I'm going to point out here, I don't want to scare anybody off from these because I have 100% faith that they not only will they correct these teeny tiny little things, they'll probably do it like in the blink of an eye, right? So by the time, if you're considering ordering one of these after this review, they will probably already have these little things corrected. So one of the things I want to point out, I love the tumbled finish on the blade, and I would venture to guess this is it might just be mine. But I noticed that there's one leftover machining line, one or two leftover machining lines right here, right? So on these blades, we obviously want to see a consistent, finish here, and the finish looks beautiful. I wouldn't change anything about the pivot, right? But we can see here's a couple of, they're just like machine lines. And obviously people don't want to see that. So that would be, great if in the future on these models, we literally just have the finish and nothing else, unless the lines are supposed to be there, in which case they need to be throughout the blade, right? Just basically a consistent finish. This side looks totally fine. This side looks perfect. And I would imagine that's how it's intended, right? I would venture to guess that this is just a little bit of a goof up, which, hey, their first folder, right? To me, that's really not a big deal. I'm certain that they're capable of a consistent finish. Outside of that, the entire knife is literally flawless, and I mean it. I mean, everything is absolutely perfect. It's really, really nice. I love how the edges right here, it's almost like rounded on the edges, but it's just a heavy chamfer, just like a heavy chamfer line here. They have the serial number and nothing on the front. This is beautiful. The MachineWise logo is actually on the spine back here. It's a real classy way of doing that, right? I don't even mind the serial numbers up here. I think maybe back them up a bit and just make them even smaller. I know that that's probably easier said than done. But really, for the presentation side of the knife, this is gorgeous. I mean, people love stuff like this where you just get to enjoy the knife, and that's it. Ergonomically, for a smaller, it's not small, a thinner titanium integral, it's actually pretty comfortable. It's not hand melting, but I will point out, this is contoured. This is actually contoured, right? So it's one of those situations, again, if you know, you know. It's not like, sometimes people, they do the flat titanium, and other companies, they do a rounded titanium. It's just a print. Nope. The machines that contour titanium are outrageously expensive. Outrageously expensive. It's a huge, huge detail. 100%. Now, listen, if you're like, my preference is flat titanium, right? Then that's your preference. Great. But that doesn't change the fact that the machines required to do this cost this company so much money. And it's not like, there you go, now you just have the machine. They also have to maintain it, right? There's wear and tear on the machine, all of that. It's expensive. It's expensive to buy. It's expensive to maintain, right? So that has to be factored in. It does, period. The contouring is very subtle, but it's beautiful. And they have milled it on top of that. That's very, very cool. It's so subtle. The rounding is so subtle. Maybe it'd be easier to view it from here. Can we see? Well, you can see the curve right here on this, the top line on this bevel right here. Subtle curvature. Very, very cool. So nice to the touch. Really, really great. The machining lines here are so fine. Absolutely beautiful. But that contouring does help out a little bit in hand, and the pocket clip is below the 50% line for the length of the handle here. The edge of this gets a little bit sharp, but you're not really going to be digging your hand into it. You're just resting on top, and honestly, it feels pretty good. A little bit of a choke up spot right here. I have to imagine that was intentional because of the curvature right here, and that's fine. Just pay attention. Don't run your finger up on the blade. But yeah, reasonably comfortable, right? If I was going to give it a grade for ergonomics, I think I'd probably give it a B, but it's very beautiful to look at, and the aesthetic really makes up for anything that is lacking in terms of ergonomic comfort, which is still good. B is good, right? Maybe you grew up in a household where you were grounded if you got anything worse than an A. But in my household, a B was still pretty good. So I'm just giving you like my scale there, what it means. But the ergonomics are good. They just really, really went all in on the aesthetic beauty, and I think it's awesome. They also managed to take a pretty basic knife profile and actually make it unique and give it a ton of character, right? If you just drew out this knife profile on paper, people would be like, oh, great, another minimalist design. But what actually came out the other end is gorgeous and very unique looking. Absolutely. Always nice to see what they do on the spine of integrals. This is one of the most interesting areas. There's no seam because it's not two pieces. It's one piece. So what do you do with the spine? In this case, they just some holes, right? You could say a little bit of weight reduction there, but I think it's kind of just designy and cool, right? There is a little lanyard area. They gave you a little lanyard hole, so you can attach a lanyard if you really want to. Pocket clip, completely and totally reversible. This is just as easy, if not easier, to manipulate with your left hand because you disengage the button lock with your index finger, which is awesome. If you decide that you absolutely must choke up on this knife, in this position and in this position only for lefties, you need to pay attention because you can squeeze it hard enough to disengage that button, right? So just pay attention. Most of the time, you're not going to do that. You're going to hold it like this. But if you are choking up and you're left-handed, you can accidentally disengage that button lock. If you're right-handed and you're choking up, there's no position where any part of your hand naturally falls to that button, so there's really no risk of it. Stop pin is located in its traditional position right here. Little tiny, is it a little bit? I think it's actually flat. No, yeah, it's the flat part of the blade is contacting. No shouldering, doesn't need it. No blade play up, down, left, or right. No movement whatsoever. I mean it, there's nothing in there. Little tiny bit of button stick that'll go away over time. No pivot lash. This is absolutely perfectly machined, right? Very smooth and consistent in here. And like I said, a little bit of a thuddy detent, but I would imagine that they can find a way to make that a little more clicky over time. So my two things. Number one, the detent. I think could feel a little bit more satisfying. I mean, it's great the way that it is, but the detent itself could be a little more clicky. That'd be great. Hard to do with the plunge lock, I know. But and then also, I don't want to see any leftover machining lines on the blade right there. But I would bet that it's just mine. I really have a hard time believing that everything else about this knife is so perfect and that this is just a product of their machine work. I think this was just a goof up, right? So this is pretty spectacular. I have no doubt in my mind that the people that actually buy knives like this will be very satisfied with it. This is really impressive. Now, what's the final price tag, right? If you're new, this is going to come as a wet canoe paddle to the face just after you've woken up from the most comfortable dream, right? $650. Now, for those of you who know and you've been around for a while and you understand why these things cost what they cost, let's put the elements together. Number one, American made. That is huge and actually makes a gigantic difference over something like a Chinese production knife. This is not the same type of American made as a company like Kershaw. Those are mostly made in the United States, made out of completely different materials, a much more automated process. Not an integral, right? So that's not apples to apples. This is a different type of American made. This is in-house, ultra precision American made. So we got that element. Number two, we got 63 Rockwell Magna Cut, right? And a titanium integral. So the materials in this case are crazy. It's not just titanium, it's a titanium integral, right? Number three, we have incredible precision tolerances. Unreal. It's just crazy how absolutely solid. You would think that this company's been making pocket knives for like 50 years. That's what it feels like to me. It's very good, right? So ultra precision, titanium integral with beautiful and legitimate materials. The blade is not just Magna Cut, it's hard Magna Cut. 63 is no joke. Yeah. Do I have a problem with a $650 price tag? No. Guys, remember, James Brand, who is having their integrals made by Ria in China, they think theirs should cost $650. Or more. $700 in some cases. Ha! No. This is, in my opinion, a superior product. Riat does great work, right? But it's just James Brand trying to charge you for their name. Riat does great work. But in my opinion, this is much, much more beautiful. And I think the precision machining is better. And it's made in the United States. It's way more expensive to create. $650 is a fair price, right? Now, that's too much money for you to buy a pocket knife. That's just you. And that's fine. Nobody needs to spend this much money on a knife. What you're buying here is absolutely a collector's item, and you are the type of knife enthusiast that is simply bored with the less expensive areas of the knife world. There's nothing wrong with that. There are tiers and makers for every type of person, right? So when I'm saying that I recommend this to people, I don't mean everybody. I mean people who specifically appreciate these elements. If you are big into American-made products, and I mean fully in-house USA-made products, precision machining, right, quality materials, all of that, you're big on integrals, oh my gosh, buy this. It's amazing, right? But if you're not specifically that, then this isn't going to be there for you. But I'm really impressed with their final price tag and their, the work that they're able to do. I think it's really, really impressive. So in that sense, I recommend this knife to those people. Very, very cool. I'm very impressed with this. So anyways, I think that's going to be it for today's review. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do of course have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.